You won't talk about it, but it's eating you alive. You smile in public, but you're drowning in private. And the worst part, no one knows. You've mastered hiding it, but you can't hide from yourself. Every night you say, "This is the last time." But by tomorrow you're right back in the same place, exhausted, ashamed, and wondering, "What's wrong with me?" But what if I told you the real battle isn't in your body, it's in your mind? And if you don't take your power back now, this silent habit will keep stealing everything you were born to become. You think it's just a release, a moment of pleasure, a harmless habit. But let me ask you something real. Have you ever stopped to feel the weight of what happens to you after? The shame, the emptiness, the mental fog, the spiritual dullness. You go from craving it, to doing it, to regretting it, and yet you keep going back. Why? Because it feels easier than facing the loneliness. Easier than dealing with rejection, easier than waiting for real love, real intimacy, real connection. But here's the truth you don't want to hear: you're not in control anymore. You think you are, you tell yourself just this once. But every time you indulge that craving, it tightens its grip. And suddenly, what was a habit becomes a cycle of self-destruction. Let me tell you a story. There was a young man, gifted, creative, full of potential. He had dreams bigger than his environment. But when no one believed in him, when he had no one to talk to, he turned to what made him feel safe, invisible pleasure. He thought it was his escape. But what he didn't realize was, every night he chose that screen, that fantasy. He was slowly killing his ambition, dimming his light, numbing his hunger for greatness. He couldn't look people in the eye. He lost the fire in his words. He stopped chasing his goals because guilt became his daily fuel. He thought no one knew, but the truth is, your energy tells on you, your discipline weakens, your self-worth drops, your relationships suffer, and worse, your identity begins to fade. But let me make something clear. This is not who you really are. You are not some creature of impulse. You are not just a body chasing highs. You are powerful beyond imagination, but you've handed your power to a habit. So I want you to ask yourself, what is this costing me? My confidence, my peace, my future wife, my connection to something higher than me. The longer you stay here, the deeper the roots grow, and the harder it is to feel alive again. But the good news, you can take it back. Starting right now, you don't need to wait for a rock bottom. You don't need to wait for shame to devour you completely. You can decide that today, this moment, is your turning point. You can delete that file. You can throw out those triggers. You can tell your body, you don't own me anymore, because the truth is discipline feels better than guilt. Control feels better than addiction. Peace feels better than release. You're not weak, you're just wounded, and the wound won't heal with fantasy, it heals with truth. And the truth is this: you're too valuable to be reduced to pixels and pleasure. You're too called to be chained. You're too powerful to waste your purpose like this. So stop, not tomorrow, not next week, now. You think it's just a release, a moment to escape the noise, a few seconds of pleasure. But what you don't realize is that every time you give in, something deeper inside you gets weaker. Something in your spirit begins to dull. It starts off innocent, almost like a curiosity. Maybe you stumbled on something late at night. Maybe someone introduced you to it. Maybe it started during those years when you didn't even fully understand what your body was doing or craving. But over time, it became your secret ritual, something that no one sees, but you carry the shame of it everywhere you go. You get better at hiding it. You become more strategic. You clear your history, you double, check that the door is locked, you wait until everyone's asleep. But what you haven't realized is that it's not just about hiding from others. You've been hiding from yourself. You're afraid to admit what this thing is doing to you, afraid to admit how it's begun to shape your view of relationships, women, yourself, and even love. Because now it's not just a moment of release. It's a dependency. It's something you run to when life feels heavy, when you feel unseen, when you're bored, anxious, or even angry. And here's the scary part, you begin to confuse it with control. You tell yourself you can stop whenever you want. You say, it's just physical. But deep down, you know something isn't right. You feel it in your chest after it's done. That sick silence, that gnawing guilt, that emptiness that no amount of scrolling or distractions can erase. And every time you promise yourself it'll be the last time, you find yourself back in the same place. It's like a loop you can't escape. A prison you built with your own hands, and you keep the key in your pocket, but something keeps you from using it. It starts affecting how you talk to people. Your eye contact weakens, your confidence shakes. You become more inward, more restless, more agitated. Real connection becomes difficult. Love feels distant. You compare everyone to the fantasy, and slowly, without realizing it, you lose the desire for real intimacy. Because the fantasy is always ready, always convenient, always controlled, but real people aren't like that. Real love takes patience. Real connection takes effort. And somewhere deep inside, you've convinced yourself you're not worthy of that anymore. You feel stained dirty, like no one would understand, or worse, that if they knew, they'd walk away. But the problem isn't just the habit. It's the lie you've told yourself that this is the best you can do, that this is your only escape, that you're too far gone. But you're not. You're still in there. That strong, focused, ambitious version of you. That version that had goals. That version that wanted to build something meaningful. But right now, he's buried under shame, under secrecy, under this illusion of pleasure that's really just pain in disguise. And it's time to face it, not run from it, not avoid it, not numb it, because every time you avoid it, it grows. Every time you numb it, it spreads. Every time you say, just one more time, the chains tighten. And maybe no one's told you this before, but your sexuality isn't evil. Your desires aren't wrong, but they were never meant to be weaponized against your own soul. They were never meant to be twisted by a screen. You were never meant to feel this broken. You were never meant to live in secret shame. You were built for more. But first, you have to be honest. Honest about what this has stolen from you. Honest about the time you've wasted. Honest about the people it's kept you from. Honest about the energy it's drained. Because until you're honest, you'll keep pretending you're fine. You'll keep settling for less. You'll keep feeding something that only leaves you hungrier. ChatGPT said there was a time when you felt alive, when your energy was clear, your mind was focused, your goals were sharp. You woke up with purpose, with something to chase. You weren't perfect, but you had direction. But then something crept in. It didn't announce itself. It didn't scream for attention. It whispered. It promised ease. It promised control. It promised comfort when everything else in your life felt like chaos. You didn't plan to depend on it. You didn't imagine something so small could start to take up so much space in your life. You thought you could handle it. But slowly, it started handling you. You began to notice the difference. Your mood started to shift. You lost motivation for the things you used to care about. You couldn't focus for long periods of time anymore. Your energy levels dropped. Your passion for things outside of the screen began to fade. The things you used to enjoy felt dull. Conversations started to feel empty. Your relationships became harder to maintain. You isolated more. You avoided eye contact. You began to live in your head, replaying fantasy after fantasy, but always left with the same hollow ending. Pleasure without fulfillment, escape without peace. You started negotiating with yourself, telling yourself you'd stop next week, that this was the last time, that you just needed it to take the edge off. That no one needed to know, and with every new excuse you gave away more of your control, more of your confidence, more of your self-worth. You noticed how easily you were triggered, how quickly your body reacted to even the smallest images or sounds. You couldn't sit in silence without your mind drifting. You couldn't be alone without the urge creeping in. And when you gave in, the cycle would reset, the momentary high followed by the crushing low. The guilt, the shame, the self-disgust, the sense that you were wasting your life one moment at a time. You started asking yourself questions you didn't have the courage to answer. Is this who I've become? Is this what my life is going to look like? Is this habit stronger than me? And in those quiet moments, when the screen is off and the room is dark, you feel it, the disappointment in yourself, the sadness, the confusion, the pain of knowing that what you're doing is not aligned with who you are. You feel the disconnect between your actions and your potential. You feel the weight of secrets nobody knows you carry. And worst of all, you begin to doubt if change is even possible. But somewhere inside of you, there's still a flicker, a small spark that says, I'm better than this, a voice that whispers, I was made for more. And though that voice has been buried under repetition and regret, it hasn't died. It's still there, waiting for you to listen, waiting for you to choose yourself again, because this isn't just about breaking a habit. This is about reclaiming your identity, your power, your clarity, your masculinity, your sense of direction. You weren't designed to live in secret torment. You weren't created to waste your strength on pixels. Your body is not the enemy. Your desires are not the problem. But the misuse of those desires is costing you more than you realize. You're not lazy. You're not weak. You're just tired. Tired of trying to feel whole through temporary fixes. Tired of numbing the pain instead of healing it. Tired of chasing something that never satisfies. And the truth is, the longer you ignore this, the deeper it takes root. What was once a choice is becoming a pattern. What was once a habit is becoming a lifestyle, and lifestyles shape destinies. You may not see the effects all at once, but over time it's stealing your focus, your self-esteem, your ability to connect with others, your ability to love and be loved. You see, no one talks about what happens after, the part they don't show you, the part you feel in the silence of your own room when the screen goes dark and all that's left is you and your thoughts. That sinking feeling in your chest, the heaviness in your heart, the guilt that wraps itself around your mind like a fog. You stare at yourself and wonder, what am I doing with my life? Why do I keep going back to something that makes me feel this empty? It's like a secret cycle that keeps you locked in a room with no windows. You know the door is there, but you can't seem to turn the knob. At first it's curiosity. You don't even know what you're doing. Then it becomes a habit. Then it becomes a comfort. Then it becomes a need. And then one day you wake up and realize that this small thing has taken up more of your life than you ever imagined. It's changed the way you think, the way you feel, the way you look at people, the way you look at yourself. And the scariest part is, it happens so gradually that you don't even notice it until you feel like you've lost control. But you haven't lost it, you've just given it away, one small compromise at a time. You start to notice you can't focus like you used to. Your energy is low, your drive is weaker, you're not as present. You procrastinate more. You lose interest in the things that used to matter. You scroll more than you speak. You avoid challenges instead of facing them. And deep down you know why. You know it's connected. But admitting it means facing something uncomfortable. It means acknowledging that a private habit is having a public effect. It means understanding that pleasure always has a price, and for some reason you've been willing to pay that price with your time, your confidence, your potential. It's not just about what you're doing, it's about what you're missing out on, the friendships you could have built, the woman you could have pursued, the goals you could have crushed, the person you could have become. But every time you give in, you shrink, you settle, you tell yourself you'll deal with it later. but later never comes, and the shame only gets heavier. And you begin to wonder if this is just who you are now. If maybe this is your new normal, but something inside you knows that's a lie, because even after all the times you've messed up, you still feel that ache for something real. You still want more. You still want to be free. Freedom doesn't come from wishing. It comes from fighting, from facing your triggers, from choosing discomfort over destruction, from getting honest with yourself about why you keep running to something that only leaves you emptier than before. Because the issue isn't the urge is human, the problem is the surrender, the problem is the belief that you're not strong enough to resist it, but you are, you've just been giving your power to a screen. And every time you do, you teach your body that it's in charge, that your discipline doesn't matter, that your vision can wait, but it can't wait. You don't get time back. You don't get moments back. You don't get this season of your life again. And if you don't get serious now, you'll wake up one day wondering how the years slipped through your fingers, how your dreams turned into memories of what could have been. And for what? For 5 minutes of escape, for a feeling that disappears the moment it ends. That's not pleasure. That's bondage dressed up in cheap disguise. And deep down, you know it's costing you more than you can afford to lose. Most people will never tell you the truth about it. They'll laugh it off. They'll tell you it's normal. They'll say everyone does it, that it's just part of being human. And maybe that's why you've justified it for so long. You told yourself that you weren't hurting anyone, that it wasn't that serious, that you were just doing what everyone else was doing. But there's something deeper happening inside you that you can't explain to anyone. A part of you that feels like it's breaking every time you go back to it. A part of you that's slowly fading into someone you don't even recognize anymore. Because deep down, you know this isn't who you were meant to be. You weren't made to live in cycles of guilt and secrecy. You weren't built to carry shame like a second skin. But here you are, stuck in a rhythm you didn't choose. You try to stop. You try to change, but somehow you keep ending up right back in the same place, wondering if it'll ever be different. You start to believe this thing has more power over you than you have over yourself. You start to believe the voice that says you're too far gone, that you've already messed up too many times, that this is just your struggle and you'll never be free, but that voice is lying to you. It's been lying to you for years. And the more you listen to it, the more you hand over the reins of your life. You weren't born with this chain around your soul. It got there slowly, one decision at a time, one bad night, one stressful week, one lonely moment, and now it's not just a behavior. It's a way of coping, a way of avoiding, a way of staying numb so you don't have to feel the weight of your own emotions. But you're not just avoiding pain. You're avoiding purpose. You're avoiding the call on your life because you can't move toward your future while you're stuck in a habit that keeps pulling you backward. It's like trying to run with your feet tied together. You might still be moving, but you're not going anywhere, and the worst part is nobody can see it. On the outside you look fine, you smile, you show up, you pretend like everything is good, but inside you're tired. You're frustrated, you're angry at yourself for falling again, and the more you try to fight it in silence, the louder it becomes, because it thrives in your isolation. It grows when you hide, and it doesn't care about your goals or your relationships or your dreams. It only wants your time, your attention, your energy, and every time you say yes to it, you say no to something more valuable, no to progress, no to peace. No to the version of you that actually believes in something higher, deeper, stronger. It's not just about breaking a habit, it's about breaking a lie, the lie that you are powerless, the lie that you can't live without it, the lie that this is as good as life gets. You weren't created for empty highs. You weren't built for 5-second pleasure that leaves you hollow on the inside. You were made for real connection, for intimacy that builds, not breaks, for love that doesn't come from a screen. You were made to protect your mind, your spirit, your body. And every time you choose discipline, you get stronger. Every time you resist, you reclaim another part of yourself. Every time you say no to the urge, you say yes to your future. But no one can make that decision for you. You can have people encourage you, guide you, pray for you, motivate you, but at the end of the day, it comes down to one choice, your choice. You either continue to let this thing chip away at you little by little, or you make the decision to rise. Not because it's easy, not because you feel like it, but because you're done losing, because you're done settling. Because you've finally realized that what you've been calling pleasure has been silently robbing you of everything worth living for. So if you're hearing this and your heart is beating a little faster, if something inside of you is saying, "This is for me," don't ignore it. That's your wake-up call. That's your moment. That's your turning point. You don't have to stay stuck. You don't have to keep living in the shadows. You can choose freedom. You can choose discipline. You can choose to rise again, not because you've never fallen, but because this time you're not staying down. Your future is too important. Your purpose is too powerful. Your soul is too valuable. And yes, you are worth the fight.